The Century Media Podcast.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Jake from Mortis, and welcome to the Century Media Podcast On The Record.
All right, our new album is called The Absence, and it will be out February 10th, coming up in a few weeks here. The title of the album, basically when it came time, we finished up production, and we kind of got down to crunch time and needed a title. We looked at the titles of our songs, and that was, track 5 on the album. That was the one that popped and seemed to kind of sum up the overall vibe of the album. We didn't really plan it ahead, but it just seemed to tie everything together pretty well, so that's what we ended up with for the title.
So we recorded the album with Jason Sukoff and Mark Lewis in Sanford, Florida. Initially back in February of 2008, we were doing some demo work for another label, and we cut a 4-song demo with Jason. And once we got signed to Century Media, it was just sort of a no-brainer to continue to work with him since, 40% of the album was already done. Jason's worked with a lot of great bands over the years. Of course, there's Crotch Duster, which is probably his initial claim to fame. He just finished doing the latest All That Remains album, Overcome, which has been received really well. It was a top 20 record in its first week, which is really cool. We actually recorded right after ATR was done working with him. He's done Chimera, Resurrection, God Forbid's, their 4th album. And of course, Trivium's Ascendancy and the other one that's not good.
And like Jake had already said, we'd worked with Jason last February, and we were just super excited to get back down there. Jason's become a really good friend of ours, and the work environment at Audio Hammer is just really laid back, and he has a way of getting things done really well without it ever really feeling like work. So the time we spent down there was great, and hopefully we can work with them again in the future. It was great time all around.
The trip from Wisconsin down to the studio in Florida, unfortunately, wasn't completely uneventful. On the way, we broke down in our 35-foot RV over the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, where we were stranded over Labor Day weekend in about 105-degree heat in the middle of nowhere on a base of a mountain next to a Lotto Mart, until a shop would open to fix our busted push rod. So that was definitely interesting. Lots of beer, lots of poker playing, lots of tomfoolery.
So after our adventures with the locals in Tennessee, who ended up being real sweethearts, we managed to coax our shitbox Death Trap RV down to the studio. And once we got there, we had a really good time. Work-wise, we stayed on schedule really well, got everything done, but the thing with recording is when you're not tracking, there's not a whole lot to do. So again, there was a lot of swearing and gambling and passing out in swimming pools going on, but for the most part, it was a good month, and we managed not to kill each other, and we all had a pretty good time. So it was a good experience. So the songs on this album, our lead guitar player, Brian, writes the majority of our music, and he's a very active and prolific writer. At any given time, he's got a lot of ideas floating around in his head, and we've released in the past, when we've released albums, we've re-recorded older material, and we all agreed for a Century Media debut, it was really important that we release 10, brand new tracks. So we, sat down as a band and spent a lot of time, kind of going through tunes that he had brought into us, and kind of picked and choose the best of, I guess you'd say, the current batch. And, it was just really important to us that we not revisit old material on this album. So, I think the 10 tracks we came up with represent where we're at as a band really well, cover a actually pretty wide spectrum stylistically, and represent us very well as a band. So we were very happy with the finished track list.
I would say overall that some of my favorite songs from the album are probably Ash, Ruin, This Departure, and probably Embrace the End, the final track, mainly because there's some cool Geddy Lee style bass playing in there, so I'm, biased. Overall, I think Jason was pretty happy with the record, although if you asked him, he'd probably just say something about how he likes our penises or something to that extent. But, everything worked out really well with him. I think Ash, if I were to venture to guess what his favorite song was off the record, I'd say that was probably it. His least favorite, undoubtedly, was, ironically, The Absence, the title track of the record. And even though I'd like to say that we named the album after that song, just despite him, it actually turns out that we as a band really, really enjoyed that track, so that's what it became.
So while we were tracking the songs, ironically enough for me anyway, when I was tracking the drums for the album, what I found to my surprise was that the tracks that I was the most worried about going into recording seemed to go the fastest and were done in 1 or 2 takes. Jason might correct me on that. And some of the tunes that I thought we'd been playing a little longer and knew a little better ended up being the ones that took the most work. But that's just the recording process and how it goes. Sometimes it's not what you expect. So when we put the album together, there was not from the beginning. There's no concept that we were striving for to hold the album together. A lot of the lyrics on the album are very personal, and I don't think there's any overall message that's trying to be conveyed. It's more about an expression of energy and feeling, and I think our goal for this album was just to put ourselves out as a band and demonstrate everything that we're about.
Yeah, and even though initially we didn't have a concept or a particular theme in mind when the songs were written, towards the end of the recording process we realized that everything was put together very cohesively. But when it came to artwork, we decided that with this newfound sort of theme and concept and this sort of darker imagery, that we would tie that into the artwork. So we chose Colin Marks, who's based in England, who had done Jeff Loomis' stuff before and countless other bands. And basically we just threw out a couple of ideas. We wanted the art to be dark, we wanted it to be abstract, we wanted to pull in some of the ideas of the album, and we didn't really have to give him a whole lot of direction. We gave him a couple of examples of stuff, talked about some very general concepts, and basically he turned around with artwork we were all very happy with. There weren't any major changes. He ran with it, and it turned out to be really great.
That it did. Thank you, Eric and Jake, for a very special On the Record this month. Make sure you check out Luna Mortis' new album, The Absence, which hits stores this month on February the 10th. Right now we're going to hear a track called Forevermore from that record. It's Luna Mortis, right here on the Century Media Podcast. Take it away, guys.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Jake from Luna Mortis.
And you're listening to the Century Media Podcast.